As I sat here this morning listening to Daryl's lesson, I came to the realization that his title and my title were the same. So I listened to the lesson very intently, trying to determine whether or not they were the same. And yes, the title's the same, but I have a little bit different take. And I also asked him ahead of time if it was okay if I continued with the same title. So what I want to first start with is Cheryl and I were traveling a few months ago, and we were listening to a book. And in the book, it was a fictional book, and it kept asking two questions. Where did we come from? And the other question is, where are we going? Isn't that what everyone wants to know? Well, I really don't think these two questions are very important anymore because God answered them so long ago. Where did we come from? Well, God created us. We read that in Genesis. Where are we going? Well, there's two places. Hopefully heaven. But there again, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the Christian journey. There you go. So I went ahead and added part 2. So we could go on with that. But as we think about journeys, I want to tell you a couple quick stories of personal journeys of my own. Andy King, and most of you know Andy, he's an avid bike rider, likes to ride bikes long distances and all that. And one day he challenged me to go for a bike ride. There was an event for wounded soldiers, and he said, come on out and let's go riding. And I said, well, how far? Because where are we going, right? And so I said, how far? And he said, well, they have two different lengths. They have one that's like 75 miles and the other one's 35 miles. And I said, okay, let's do the 35 because I'm not in that great a shape. And so he agreed to, take the lesser path for me. When I got there, it was a nice foggy morning and it was chilled and so forth. And he talked me into the 75-mile trip. Okay? So we started on that journey, and I was feeling pretty good. For about the first 10 minutes, we were moving along. I was sticking with the crowd and all that. And I thought, wow, I'm going to be able to do this. And then it hit me. For the last 10 minutes, we've been riding downhill. I knew the finish was the same place we started, so therefore I knew that we were going to have to climb that hill back. I made the distance and all that, but the point of the story was that partway through there's this chaser vehicle that's supposed to be following the people in the back of the pack. Well, I told you I wasn't in great shape. Well, they came up and they asked us if we wanted a ride, which means that they'd caught up to me. And we said, no, we're gonna finish this journey. We're gonna accomplish what we set out to do. We traveled a little bit further, and what this truck was also doing was picking up all the signs that indicated where your turns were. Okay? So he waited at the next station. We went by and he picked up the signs and he passed us again. So we figured he'd be at the next station. We never saw him again, nor did we see any more signs. There's a little indication on that they paint on the road telling you where to turn if you see it. And Andy and I missed it, which then turned our 75-mile bike ride into about a 79-mile bike ride. So it went a little further. But the key here is sometimes when you're on journeys, you might lose your way. The other thing that, quick little story, is that my family, on occasion, we go orienteering in the woods. And when you go orienteering, obviously in the woods, there's paths and so forth. But you have a compass and you have a map, and it's a race. And you're trying to get from point A to point B to make a marker, and then from point B to C. And they time you how long it takes you to make this entire journey. But you're not following trails. You're following, well, a bearing and a distance, and trying to find a little flag in the middle of the woods. And so when you're doing that, the way you do it is you set a bearing and you look for a tree or something that's easy to recognize, and you travel to that tree. Well, if you take your eyes off of that tree in the middle of the woods for a moment and then look back, all the trees look the same. So you don't remember which tree you were looking at. And so once again, it's very easy to lose your bearings. It's very easy to lose the focus of your path. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight is some of those things. So what are we looking for? Well, I'm looking for that marker that tells me where to turn. I'm looking for, well, that next marker that I'm supposed to pick up when I'm orienteering. And so when I think about the things in our lives that distract us from, well, the Christian journey, it wraps around us. It's what we're looking for. And sometimes these are personal things. I want to be taller. I'm not tall enough. Maybe I want to be skinnier. Okay, I'm speaking personally on that one. Okay. Maybe different color of hair. When I was growing up, I had bright orange red hair that was like a neon sign. Now I have brown, so that worked out for me. But at that time, I think I might like to have the orange back, but I know Cheryl does. Or some of us just, well, want to have hair at all, right? Okay. There's other things too. We want a life of no stress. Anyone here have a life of no stress? No concerns, no worries, no effort. When I think about no effort, I think about the Garden of Eden and what God originally planned for us. Okay. Want bigger houses? Bigger houses mean you have more to take care of, guys. New car, nice clothes. These are all things that the world tries to distract us with, right? What about escape? We want to escape from this world. What do you mean by that, Bret? Well, there's all sorts of things out there that can help us or make us think that we're escaping from our own reality. We do have our reality, and sometimes those realities aren't necessarily the most pleasant things. But we know that people escape with drugs, alcohol, what have you. Anything to take, well, the sting away from this life, right? And so they'll use those things to escape. Good feelings, we're looking for just feeling good. There's the world's full of medications that will make us feel better. And number one drug in the world is caffeine. Who needs their morning caffeine, right? Okay, so we're trying to feel better. What about entertainment? Does entertainment distract us from our journeys? Because, well, we want to be entertained rather than entertaining God. Knowledge. We can seek knowledge and education and all that and forget God, and a lot of times that happens because people start to think that they know more than God. Wealth, power, authority, whatever you want to call it. But are we satisfied with any of those things? Are we satisfied that those things make a difference in our life? Well, it's kind of that grass is greener on the other side. We see other people doing things like that, and we think, well, obviously those people must be happy. Do you think they have no stress? They have no worries? There's been a few shows that I've seen here lately of people that are famous, and they have titles like why such and such is so sad, why this person committed suicide, why, and yet those are the people that sometimes our young people, sometimes we idolize because they seem to have it going on. But yet, the more you have, the more you want, whether in any of those topics, right? So the more hair you have, the more hair you want. Mine's getting down into my ears now. Okay? So what I want you to do is turn over to the book of Ecclesiastes for a moment. We'll start in chapter 2, but we're going to look at several verses here. And obviously we know of this book as Solomon and Vanity of Vanities. And so I just want to think about these things for a little bit. In chapter 2, verse 1, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this was also vanity. And so what we'll see here is Solomon, he experimented with so many different things, but yet his conclusion at each one is that, well, it was a waste of time. It was vanity. Chapter 2, verse 11. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Education, verse 21. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, yet he must leave his heritage to a man who was not labored for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. I'm sure many of you have been to the Biltmore Estates, and I've only been there once, but as I'm walking through the tours and looking at all this and hearing the stories of the man who set about to create this area and wanted to own all that he could see, in my head, Ecclesiastes was ringing loud and clear. Vanity of vanities. The man died shortly after he married and never really got to fully experience the thing that he built. And then it got passed on to his family, who couldn't afford to keep it up because all that he built. And so when I think about work and I think about wisdom and knowledge and all those things, that we can try to gain all those things, but if we're not serving God, what use are they? Let's go ahead and go to chapter 3, verse 19. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so dies the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. So even our own breaths, there's nothing that we can do that's going to make us live forever. We're all going to die. So living for that moment in time, and that means basically living for ourselves, the next great adventure or what have you, we're all going to still have the same fate. And then chapter 5, verse 7. For in the multitude of dreams and many words there is also vanity. So we can have these dreams, we can have these things that, we're trying to, be out of our own reality. We're trying to escape where we're at. But even those dreams are vanity. And then verse 10. He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity. Basically, we can have all sorts of things, but that won't satisfy us, so then we'll just want more. We'll want to have more abundance in our lives. It never satisfies. Then chapter 6, verse 9. Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. Something new, everyone wants that next new thing. Whatever's out there, whatever's different, whatever is coming up. So we buy a car today and it has all the bells and whistles, and 3 years from now it has nothing compared to what the new cars have. That's what happens, but we should be satisfied with what we're doing. But we're always looking for the next new thing. Why is that? Well, the commercials want us to think that, the next new thing is so much better than the last thing. And you think about a car, what's its primary job? Get us from point A to point B. So, something new. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 10. And of course, the other thing that we see all the time is that our society wants to be young, and so those of you who are young, enjoy it while you can, because I remember as a young person, I always wanted to be older because older people get the benefits, right? Well, once you get older, then you want to be younger. So that's called envy. Anyway, verse 10, therefore remove sorrow from your heart and put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Trying to stay focused on what our childhood was, what we were when we were children. I played football. I've talked to Drew a little bit about playing football and practices as he's in summer camps and talking about the heat of being out there and exercising and so forth. And I remember my glory days, but that's what they were. I'm glad I'm not out there with you, Drew, because I couldn't do it anymore. So all these things, they're problems for us that we're trying to deal with. But these are all distractions, guys. They're distractions from what we should be doing. God created us for so much more. It's not about things. It's not about education. It's not about wealth. We have a different purpose. A different journey to go on. One last verse in Ecclesiastes. Turn to the end of the book there. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So the book of Ecclesiastes, we kind of ran through it very quickly, but if you want to know about life's journey, go read Solomon's journey. The conclusion of the whole matter: fear God and keep his commandments. We don't like being afraid of people, but what this means is respect God, understand God. We love our parents, but we feared them, didn't we? Well, it could have been fear for physical punishment. It could be fear for just disappointing them. No one likes to disappoint their parents. All these things that Solomon tried, he said, were vanity. They're a waste of time. Fear God and keep his commandments. Turn over to Matthew. 6 and 24. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. So all these distractions I'm talking about, these are the kinds of things that tend to make us serve them. If you think about some of the things that you own, not that we own anything because God owns them, but if we think about some of those things, okay? Recently, when I was getting ready, Cheryl and I were getting ready to go out and work in the yard. Kevin was heading out somewhere, and he looks at me and says, "I don't think I want a yard. I don't want to have to do yard work." And I'm thinking, yeah, I understand that, because I'm sweating in the July and the June, late June heat to cut the grass. And then I'm thinking, there's other things that the house requires. Because I own a house, I have to take care of it. Sometimes I think the house owns me. The dirty clothes own me and Cheryl. Okay, I'll give her credit too. But we do so much to keep up those things that we think we own. Maybe they own us. And then Matthew 6:33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. All these things. Put God first. Remember the comments about stress and worry and all that? Does that mean that we'll have a stress-free life? He never promised that. But he did promise us a life that would be satisfying. A life that when we serve God and that we would be satisfied that we are serving a higher purpose. And then let's look over at John 14 and 21. He who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me, and he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. Once again, remember the story about orienteering and looking towards the tree in order to keep my bearing, in order to stay there? Loving God's what it's about. Keeping our eyes on that. Not all the distractions of this world. The serpent came to Eve in the garden and distracted her with, knowledge. You'll have the knowledge of good and evil. You'll be like God. Power, knowledge. Those are the things that distract us. And then in 1 Timothy chapter 6, starting in verse 6. Now godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolishness and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And just to clarify, it doesn't say the love of money is evil. It says that if that's our main focus, it's evil. If we, I shouldn't say it's the love, it's not that money is evil, okay, but it is if we're using it or distracting ourselves from God with that it certainly can cause us to dishonor God. And so he wants us to be content, okay, content with what we have as far as needs. There's a big difference between needs and wants. So, fill in the blank. Let's go look at Luke for a minute. And then I'm going to explain what I mean here. Luke chapter 12, verses 15 through 21. I missed my verse. And he said to them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." Then he spake a parable unto them, saying, "The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentiful. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, since I have no room in store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build bigger and greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So it is he who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich towards God." And so when I say fill in the blank here, what I mean is that this particular person was well, looking at his riches, and that was taking him to a point where he wasn't worried about God, wasn't worried about dealing with God or following God. And so, fill in the blank. We're not all tempted by the same things. Maybe someone says, hey, I have much education. I can rest at ease because I know so much. Or maybe I have such a large house. Or maybe I have this. Or maybe whatever it is that's distracting us from God's will, that's what we need to be concerned about. So those first two questions I asked, I said they're better questions. What are we doing with our lives? Are we giving our lives to God? Or are we being selfish with our lives and living a life that's all about ourselves? What is our purpose? This is one of the things that everybody wants to know. What is my purpose in life? Trying to find fulfillment, trying to understand, try to be satisfied. Well, God's given us the answer. He's told us how to serve Him. And are we chasing things that will not last? Well, does anything on this earth last? That new car that we bought 15 years ago is, not so new anymore, but it was new then. Vanity or purpose? The journey of our life is to serve God and our fellow man. When we're doing this, we will be satisfied because we're satisfying God. That's the lesson. That's what I believe that God wants us to know. Now, I don't know exactly why Daryl decided to do the Christian journey, but I do know that the eldership is concerned about the Christian journey that each and every member has, and that we're all, striving to make sure that as we, as a congregation here, have the opportunity to live a Christian journey, to have opportunities to serve God and to serve our fellow Christians and to serve our fellow man. So maybe that's where it comes from, is that we both have the same things on our heart as we strive to be a part of this congregation. So if you have need at this time, maybe you haven't ever taken the steps to become a Christian, this is your opportunity to obviously hear and repent of living a life for yourself versus God, and confess that Christ is the Son of God, and then to be baptized and then live a faithful life. Those are the basic steps of salvation. Maybe you want to know more about that, and you can speak to some of the elders, and we'll be more than happy to share with you that. Or maybe you've done all that, and maybe you've had a distraction in your life that's taking you further away, and you want the prayers of the congregation. We have that as an opportunity as we stand and sing.